Vivec, the capital of Vardenfell, one of, if not the biggest playable cities featured in any of the Elder Scrolls games. Vivec has a lot to offer to the player, with its immersive storytelling, rich history, cultural diversity, and its involvement with many different questlines. In fact, the last part is the topic for today's discussion. I was browsing through the unofficial Elder Scrolls pages, glancing over which side quests to do, and it appears as though Vivec has no shortage of them. I was originally going to focus on one quest and talk about it in detail. However, I couldn't even get to that quest before all these other ones were thrown in my face, and I say that in a positive way. So, flipping the script for what I intended to do, let's discuss 3 fun side quests found in Vivec, featured in the Elder Scrolls III Morrowind. I'll go through each one, exploring the different choices and options provided, and then, once completed, I'll give my thoughts on it. As per usual, the facts and information provided are brought to you by the game itself and the unofficial Elder Scrolls pages. The first quest for today is titled An Apothecary Slandered. In fact, this quest was the one that derailed my original idea, as the quest giver threw a curveball at me. It begins with the player wandering around in the plaza of the Foreign Quarter Canton. There are a variety of NPCs walking around, going on about their lives. If you decide to talk to them, say specifically a red guard named Domelin, he has something interesting for you. He'll say, "Take this, friend. I think everyone should read this leaflet. It has important information on it." Intrigued and confused, I asked about it, but all he said was, "It has important information on it, something must be done." Backing out of the conversation, I decided to see what its contents were. It read, "Beware. Have no dealings with Aurane Fairness. She is known to be both underhanded and unethical in her dealings. The materials she uses are both shoddy and dangerous. You could come to great harm from her products. Her shop should be avoided at all costs. See these testimonials. I took potion and got sick. Lost good lunch. Grug Bob G. Her materials looked old and stale. Not good for alchemical use. Darren O. She should be disemboweled and fed to Nyx hounds. Hlorngar F. From the sounds of it, it certainly seems like Aurane Fairness has a lot of negative reviews regarding her wares. Attempting to speak with Domelin again, he simply asked if I wanted another leaflet, and when inquiring about it, he said the same little message as before. So, deciding to take matters into my own hands, I paid a visit to Aurane Fairness. This way, I could make a judgment for myself and see what all of the comments were about. Locating her in the apothecary of the Upper Wasteworks in the Foreign Quarter, we began chatting. I brought up the leaflet that I was handed, and she said, "A leaflet? What's this? This is ridiculous. It's all lies. Why, someone must pay for this. Tell you what, Bard, if you can find out who is behind this slander, I'll reward you well. Ask whoever gave you this leaflet what's going on. This is an outrage." Hearing "reward" at the end perked my ears up, and I threw on my investigator's cap. The best way to track down the creator of the leaflets is by returning to Domelin and demanding answers. For all we know, he could be the author, and the case could be solved that easily. Returning to the plaza and chatting with the Red Guard, I asked him about them and was prompted with 2 different dialogue choices. One was to call out its contents as lies and say that Fairness is an honest woman. The other was to demand to know where they came from. Trying the latter first, Domelin replied with saying, "Look, I don't have to tell you a thing, get out of my way." This quickly put an end to the conversation. Trying again, and this time casting a charm spell, I insisted that Fairness was an honest woman. Domelin, likely feeling bad for spreading the slander, said, "Listen, friend, times have been tough for me and mine. So, when Balin offered me some gold to hand these out for her, I jumped at the chance. Gotta make ends meet, you know? Balin makes the leaflets, I just distribute them." Running with the Balin prompt, Domelin gives me a little more info, saying, "Right, Galuro Balin. She's an apothecary over in the Telvanni section. I don't think her business is doing too well right now." So, it all makes sense. Competing storefronts, one has all of the customers, the other is jealous, and makes up a bunch of misinformation, a tale as old as time. If you wanted to jump straight to the ending of the quest, you could seek out Fairness once more after hearing Domelin's confession. When the origin of the leaflets is brought up, Aurane says, "Galuro Balin, that fetcher, I can't believe she'd do this to me. I'm reporting this to the magistrate. This is ridiculous. Thank you for your help. Here's your payment as promised." The reward is 100 gold, which as a higher leveled character really doesn't go a long way, but before level 5 or so would probably make a world of difference. Now, if you did want a little extra dough, you could seek out the aforementioned Galuro Balin and confront her. She runs the apothecary over in the Telvanni Canton and can be found in the Wasteworks. Speaking with her and bringing up the leaflets, she says, "I'm sure I don't know what you're talking about. What makes you think? Alright, I admit it. Business has been slow though, and that Frareness gets a lot of business around here. Tell you what, I'll pay 100 drakes to keep this to yourself. What do you say? You can either choose to expose her or keep the secret." By agreeing to do the latter, she responds, "Excellent, I appreciate your help. Make sure you don't mention this though, it could really cause problems for me." Well, unfortunately for Balin, that's exactly what I intend to do. After securing her hush money, you can return to Alrain and divulge the juicy secret. By ratting out Balin, Freris spills the exact same dialogue as before and hands you the 100 gold as promised. This way, you come out with 200 gold and you can buy yourself a nice potion or two. So let's talk about this quest. It's honestly pretty straightforward and there isn't too much to read into here. As mentioned before, a tale as old as time. Domelin and his family, friends, kin, clansmen, whoever they are strapped for gold. Galuro Balin approaches them and pays them some chump change to hand out the leaflets. Based off of Domelin's dialogue, it doesn't sound like he's actually read them. When asked about the leaflets, he just says that they're important and that everybody should take a look at them. If he didn't really read them, then I feel, in a weird way, he's absolved from his part in all this. Obviously though, there's a decent amount of negligence here, and that could put him back on the hook depending on how you look at it. What I really want to know is if those testimonies featured in the leaflet are fake or not. My best guess would be that they are fake, as it appears as though the 3 NPCs mentioned, Grug Bob G, Darren O, and Horngar F, aren't actually present in the game. Of course, that doesn't completely count it out as being real, but to me, feels highly unlikely. If they were in the game, then it would have been interesting to see action taken against them. This brings me to my final point. Frareness mentions that she's going to bring this up to the magistrate. It would have been interesting to receive follow-up on this, and it also would have been neat to see Balin replaced by another Telvanni merchant at the apothecary. Something tells me though that there's probably some underlying jurisdiction issues when it comes to the cantons and their boundaries. So who knows if the Telvanni could even be touched by the 4 1/4 section, which is imperial ruled. In any case, thus ends the quest and discussion for an apothecary slandered. The next quest for today is titled For the Love of a Bosmer. This one begins with the player in the plaza section of the Halalu Canton. Wandering around and simply making observations, there's a chance that your eyes will happen across a strange note. This note is oddly placed in the mushroom garden close to the No Name Club. It's labeled as a letter from Gadain, and it reads, "Dearest Eraldil, long have I watched you from afar, bathing in the light that is your beauty. Long have I wished for the courage to speak to you of my undying love for you. Your eyes are really brown in that good wood elf kind of way. And your hair is really black and looks good on your head. You walk with grace and beauty, and perhaps someday you'll walk with me too. Please tell me you share my love. I have seen you in my store, browsing for minutes on end. My love for you is so great, I would give you a discount on most all of my items for sale. I look forward to your response. Yours, Gadain." As comically put by the UESP, no one should really take notes on this one. There are some lines where he's pulling out his inner Shakespeare, but others not so much. This Gadain actually runs the general goods shop in the plaza. Letter in hand, he can be approached and has some words for you, saying, "You say you found a love letter of mine? Oh dear, this is embarrassing." Perhaps slightly, but we should never judge a guy who's in his feels. Inquiring about the letter, Gadain says, "You found that? Oh dear, I really meant to throw that away. It's all true though. I have loved her since the moment I first set eyes on her. I just haven't had the courage to speak to her yet. Perhaps you'll speak to her for me, plead my case. I'd be very grateful." Here, you're prompted to either leave him on his own, which halts the quest, or say that you'll speak with Eredil on his behalf. Choosing the latter, Andaris says, "You will? Wonderful. If you'll just tell her how I feel, tell her how happy I'd make her, I'm sure she'd be interested. You'll probably find her in the Wasteworks. That's where I've seen her at times." Worried that I'm actually aiding a stalker, I left the conversation and descended to the Wasteworks. I saw a bosmer wandering around and upon getting in close, noticed that her nameplate placed her as Eraldil. Speaking with her, I brought up the love letter and she said, He thinks I might be interested in him? Ha, that's a ridiculous notion. The very thought, insane. I mean, has he seen himself in the mirror lately? I'm sure he's a decent enough sort, but that's ridiculous. He might be more suited for my cousin, Glethel. She's a lowborn, plain, and desperate for a husband. But me, you could tell Gadain that you've spoken to Eraldil, and she's not interested. Intrigued in the cousin topic, I asked about Glethel, and she replied, she's a decent, if rather common sort. I mean, I don't have much to do with her. She's rather plain, not too bright, but she's not a bad person for what she is. You can find her at the Elven Nations Corner Club. She's a serving girl. Invested and interested, I paid a visit to this tavern and actually located the bosmer cousin. Unfortunately, she wasn't much of a talker and didn't have anything to say at all with regards to Gadain, Eraldil, or the quest in general. So, taking the cue and returning to Gadain, he asked if I had spoken with Eraldil yet. Giving him the lowdown, he said, she said she wanted nothing to do with me, but that's awful. I was certain she'd at least consider the idea. Well, I'll have to go with my backup plan. Unsure of what he means, I asked about this second chance, and he said, well, I figured there was the slight chance she wouldn't be interested in me right away, so I had an alchemist mix up a special potion for me. For anyone else, it will seem a normal health potion, but if Eraldil drinks it, she'll find herself incredibly attracted to me. Perhaps you'll deliver it to her for me. This is where the quest branches off into two different paths. You can choose to deliver the potion for him, or you can tell him about Glethel, Eraldil's cousin. Exploring the latter first, Andaris says, her cousin, you say? Well, I suppose this was a pretty ridiculous scam, and if her cousin has half of Eraldil's beauty, she'd still be twice as beautiful as any other woman I've met. Perhaps I'll look her up sometime, friend. Thank you for your help. With that wrapped up, the only thing to do now is to wait for Gadain to pull out his moves and woo Glethel. Exiting the shop, I forced to wait for 10 straight in-game days, and then went back on inside. Surprisingly, but also expected, Glethel was wandering around the storefront. Chatting with Gadain, he said, greetings friend, what a wonderful day. As you can see, all is well with me, or should I say us. Glethel and I are now married, and nothing could be better. My man certainly moves fast, and continuing the conversation, he says, it's been simply wonderful, my friend. Glethel and I are perfectly suited for one another. Here, please take this as a token of our gratitude. Gadain hands me a flame mirror robe, which has the enchantments of resist fire for 20 to 40 points for 60 seconds, as well as reflect for 20 to 30 points for another 60 seconds. As for Glethel, well, she still doesn't have much to say, and her disposition with me was as low as ever, but as long as Gadain's happy. That's one ending of the quest, but there's also another to cover, and it doesn't have a pleasant ending like this one. Reverting back to the love triangle situation, this time I chose to deliver the potion to Eraldil. Gadain responded by saying, I appreciate your help, friend. Just tell her it's an apology from Gadain. She should accept it then. Then, once she drinks it, she'll fall into my arms in no time. Feeling a bit hesitant about tricking the poor bosmer, figured might as well go for it. I've never heard of a love potion like this one before, and for all I knew, it probably wasn't going to work anyways. Returning to the Wasteworks and chatting with Eraldil, I handed the potion over as well as Gadain's quote-unquote apology. She replied by saying he wishes to apologize, how very noble, but at least he sent a gift along, which is certainly appropriate. Well, I'm sure I'll have use for it sometime, although it's probably not even good quality. The conversation wraps up, and I leave her to her fate of maybe falling in love with Andaris. Ascending back to the general goods store, I told Gadain that the deed was done, and he responded by saying, wonderful, I'm sure this'll work. Thank you for your help, my very good friend. I'll make sure to name our first child after you. How does Bard Andaris sound? Oh, and take this as a token of our friendship. Soon, she'll be mine. Gadain hands me a light ring as a reward. The ring has the enchantment of light for 20 points for 15 seconds on target. Similar to the whole Glethel setup, I forced to wait for 10 in-game days in order to see if the potion had actually worked. Once the necessary time had passed, I went on back inside and wouldn't you know it, Eraldil was wandering around behind the counter. Thinking Gadain would be over the moon about his relationship, I spoke with him and learned of the harsh reality. He said, oh, it's you. Well, I hope you're happy. That stupid love potion idea of yours worked, and now look what it's gotten me. She's a monster. Nagging, complaining, spending all my money. How could you let me get into this? Well, what do you want? Definitely not the reaction I was expecting. What's more, his disposition towards me was so low that he refused to offer me his services. So, with both endings wrapped up, let's talk about this quest. We find Gidane's love note hidden in the mushroom garden. He said he meant to get rid of it, but what was it doing there in the first place? Was he trying to hide it and then hoped Eraldil would stumble across it? Did he hand it to her and she threw it away out of disgust? After realizing that maybe it wasn't a good idea, did he throw it away and forget where it was placed? Who knows, but I actually think there's a chance that the love letter could have worked on her. Again, it probably would have resulted in his misery, but he did mention that she would get discounts at his store, and she apparently loves to spend his money. So maybe if he leaned more into that aspect, it would have worked out from the get-go. Apart from that, this quest just goes to show you that you probably shouldn't alter fate, and that what will be, will be. When Gidane decides to go with Gothel, the less obvious choice, his life turns out for the better. They're happy, on the same page, and enjoy each other's company. On the other hand, when Gidane chooses Eraldil, his number one prospect, he forces her to be with him through unnatural means. It turns out being for the worse, and karma comes for him. She drives him crazy, and what's more, he blames the player for setting this whole thing up, even though it was his idea. The key takeaway, if something feels forced, it will probably end up feeling off for everyone involved. Thus ends the discussion for the quest, For the Love of a Bosmer. The final quest for today is titled The Bad Actor. This one begins with the player in the lower wasteworks of the Foreign Quarter. By wandering into the enchanters and speaking with the proprietor, Mian-Gai, he'll open by saying something rather interesting. "Welcome, Breton. It is good to see a customer in the store. That annoying fool outside chases them away." Intrigued, I asked about this irritating person, and Mian-Gai said, "Did you not see him as you entered? It is that Marcel Merard. Outside my shop he stands all day, selling ridiculous wares. Get rid of him I would like to, but the law says he's within his rights. Perhaps you might find a way." From here, there are two prompts. One ends the quest immediately, and the other has you telling the Argonian that you'll do what you can. Choosing the latter, he replies with, "You think you can? I would like that. Make him go away, and I will have rewards for you." Always enjoying the promise of a reward, I left the store and spotted the Breton wandering the halls. Striking up a conversation with him, he opened by saying, "Hello, my friend. What a glorious time it is. Perhaps I can interest you in one of my fine wares. All magical, all for a low, low price. A man in my line of work must find a way to make a living." Intrigued, I asked him what he did for work, and he said, "I'm an actor, or at least I hope to be. I am the poor player who struts and frets for a while on stage and then has lunch. I am full of sound and furiousness. Oh, if there were but a good theater troupe in this town, I could give up on selling these baubles. Oh, woe is me." From here, there are two dialogue prompts. One is to straight up threaten him, and the other is to simply ask him to leave the area. Choosing to be civil at first, I selected the latter, and he responded by saying, "Leave here? I could not. It is the finest spot in all of Vivec from which to sell my wares. Otherwise, I'd have nothing upon which to support myself. Dear friend, neither a borrower nor an honest tradesman be. That's what my father always told me." Curious, I asked him about this theater troupe, and he said, but to have a company of players, for only then will I be able to showcase my arts. Yes, all the world stage, but no one wants to pay me to act on it. At this point, there are a couple of different options. The quickest and easiest one is to simply kill Marcel. By taunting him and lowering his disposition, he'll load up his fists and start swinging away. Striking him down, there are no penalties as he made the first move. As suggested, the poor guy really didn't have much on him, including those magical wares he was raving about. With Marcel out of the picture, you can return to Mian-Gai and inform him that the annoying fool won't be scaring off his customers anymore. In response, the Argonian says, "You killed him? Well, I suppose that's one way of taking care of that problem. But now I'll have the guards around here asking questions, harassing my customers. I don't need that at all. I appreciate you getting rid of him, but there had to be another way. Anyway, take this, and you didn't get it from me." Mian-Gai hands me 250 gold, and that's one way the quest can end. However, there is a better and more fun option. Reverting back to my conversation with Marcel, who in Vivec could possibly be a playwright, artist, poet, and author that wants to put together a theater troupe? If you've had any interactions with House Halalu, you'll likely know the name of Crassius Curio, or better known as Uncle Crassius. He's a counselor for House Halalu and majorly helps the player in becoming the Hortator. By asking around some of the citizens for possible leads on a theater troupe, they might say that Unc is putting together a cast for his newest piece of work. Paying Curio a visit in his manor and inquiring about it, he'll say, "A company of players, yes. I would love to be able to form a company to put on my new play. But there are so few in the area that are willing to act, even for a good price. Of course, I need an actor with wit, grace, charm, and a firm... Oh, never mind. You wouldn't be a bad choice, Muffin, but you seem to have other matters to attend to. If you see someone else who fits the bill, send them to Uncle Crassius." Before leaving, I asked him about his new play. He handed me a copy of it and said, "It is almost completed. I call it The Lusty Argonian Maid. It's a rather bawdy tale, but I think it will play well with the people. Be sweet to Uncle Crassius, and there's something in it for you, sweet cakes. Here, take a look at some of the work so far. I think it's scrumptious." Peeking at the script, it reads, Act 4, Scene 3 continued. Lifts her tail. "Certainly not, kind sir. I am here but to clean your chambers." Crantius Colto. "Is that all you've come here for, little one? My chambers?" Lifts her tail replies, "I have no idea what it is you imply, master. I am but a poor Argonian maid." Crantius Colto says, "So you are, my dumpling, and a good one at that. Such strong legs and a shapely tail." Lifts her tail says, "You embarrass me, sir." Crantius Colto replies, "Fear not. You are safe here with me." Lifts her tail says, "I must finish my cleaning, sir. The mistress will have my head if I do not." Crantius Colto then replies, "Cleaning, eh? I have something for you. Here, polish my spear." Lifts her tail remarks, "But it is huge. It could take me all night." Crantius Colto then says, "Plenty of time, my sweet, plenty of time." End of Act 4, Scene 3. With no other context, it's certainly something else and very much up Crassius' realm of creativity. Regardless, with a theater troupe forming, I returned to Marcel in the foreign quarter and informed him of his new gig. He replied with, "You found a troupe forming? Then I must go to see the noble patron. Thank you, my friend. You will not be forgotten. Yes, the play's the thing, wherein I'll catch the purse strings of that guy." With Mian Guy's problem solved, I went back into the enchanters and brought on the good news. Ecstatic, the Argonian said, "You've done it. I admire your persuasiveness, friend. Thank you for your help. Allow me to give you this as a token of my appreciation." As a reward, he gives me an iron shard skewer, which is an enchanted spear that deals 1 to 4 points of frost damage for 1 second. With the quest wrapped up, let's talk about it. I suppose the story goes that Marcel was harassing customers outside of Mian Guy's shop. He claims to have been selling magical wares, so likely enchanted items, which is a double whammy in terms of screwing over the Argonian. It's interesting that it's within Marcel's rights to openly sell things out in the halls of the lower wasteworks. There's a lot of other simpler things that can't be done, so I guess I'm intrigued that soliciting outside shops is allowed. The option to kill Marcel is definitely a bit too much, and I can see it being offered for players who want to walk a less moral path. Otherwise, finding the theater troupe is the way to go, and I must say, it's always a comical treat to get to talk with Uncle Crassius. His dialogue always cracks me up, and it really was an honor to get to read an early draft of The Lusty Argonian Maid. Hopefully Marcel knows what he's signing up for, but I'm more than certain he's the man for the job. Beyond that, this quest is pretty straightforward, and even though the iron shard skewer isn't the best reward, it can be sold for a lot more than 250 gold, which is a plus. With that, thus wraps up the discussion on the quest, The Bad Actor. Let me know down below what you thought of these quests, and until next time, keep on adventuring.